We finally know who killed Bunny Folger, and we also know who the next victim will be. Given that rival podcaster Cinda Canning, Tina Fey, who was trying to implicate Mabel, Charles, and Oliver in the murder of Arconia's board president and resident troublemaker, was breathing down their necks, Mabel, Charles, and Oliver had to put their thinking caps on quickly. So, who could it have been? Was it Alice, Cara Delevingne, the art curator with a quick and undeniable bond to Mabel and a penchant for the macabre and true crime? How about Yuma, who had been living at the Arconia and already knew about Bunny's extremely expensive painting hanging in her house, with a key to the apartment to boot? Or was it someone else? Well, it turns out not one mystery was solved in the season 2 finale, but two, including a case everyone had long assumed was already closed. Here's how the killer was finally unmasked. Becky Butler, Cinda's first big cracked podcast case, was an Oklahoma office worker who was seemingly murdered by the town's mayor in a lustful rage. He was even in prison for it. Well, it turns out that Becky wasn't as murdered, or even missing, as many would first assume. She's actually Poppy White, Cinda's long-tortured producer. Miserable in her life as a mayor's aide, Becky decided to make a break for it and start a new life. Disappearing from her Oklahoma town, she cut her hair, started wearing glasses and waited for her vanishing to pick up steam. Eventually, she brought Becky's Disappearance to the attention of Cinda, giving her the idea for hit true crime podcast, All Is Not Okay in Oklahoma, and leveraging a job out of it. The podcast is such a smash that Cinda's investigative efforts resulted in the Lecce mayor being sent to prison for a murder that didn't even happen. But Cinda gave the newly renamed Poppy zero credit and started getting angry when the Only Murders gang started getting the attention of the true crime crowd. Desperate for a successful second outing, she leaned on Poppy for ideas. Snubbing the idea of finding Rose Cooper, the missing artist, Cinda declared she was going to sort it out herself because she wanted a murder, and if one wasn't going to fall into her lap, she'll seek one out. With Bunny's death being investigated, Becky decided to come clean to Mabel, which gives her an idea. With the ever-present threat of Cinda's final episode of Only Murderers in the building ready to pin the murder of Bunny on bloody Mabel, the trio had to think fast to figure out how to get the killer to confess. Thankfully, they had a team of wannabe actors at the Arconia as backup for their big killer reveal party because the gang are nothing if not tasteful. Inviting Cinda and Poppy along to the event, the group used everything they had against Cinda to confess that she had orchestrated the murder in order to advance her own podcast career, taking out the competition as she did so. However, Cinda will not say she did it, which is when Mabel turns around and says it's because she didn't do it. In a big unveiling, Mabel then pins the blame on Alice, who had come into their lives shortly after Bunny's death. Believing she was after the expensive Rose Cooper painting Bunny had, and Bunny wanting nothing short of $14 million for it, Alice killed her out of spite in a bid to get hold of it. In a rage, Alice stabs Charles, and he is left to bleed out on the floor while the police are called. Impressed, Cinda, in an uncharacteristic show of sweetness, praised Mabel for figuring out the culprit, apologizing for thinking it was her, and even offering her the opportunity for her own podcast. With that, Poppy absolutely loses it at her boss, fed up of being ignored. As she sneezes her way through a rant about how she deserved one over Mabel, the truth finally comes out: she was the killer. After seducing Detective Krebs, Michael Rappaport, the pair had orchestrated a murder plan to kill someone off, pin it on Cinda, and both reap the benefits of catching her. Krebs would be promoted, and Poppy would finally get the podcast she desperately wanted. Cinda didn't even realize she was actually Becky Butler and realized she had been used in order to give Poppy a new life and a clean break. Only it didn't quite work that way, and Poppy was busted as it was revealed the entire party was a ruse, everyone involved at the event acting things up. Even Charles isn't dead, using theatrical blood in order to rig a murder scene. With that, Krebs and Poppy are arrested and taken away. End scene, Arconia. Emmys for you all. With the murders in their building officially solved, the trio begin to go their separate ways, wrapping up their podcast. Charles returns to his hit show Brazos with a more regular role and even finally asks out crew member Joy, who delightfully accepts. Mabel starts renovations on her apartment for a fresh start, even saying goodbye to the window mural with the help of Alice as they paint over it together. Oliver comes clean about not being Will's real father, and the proud son tells him, "If you're not my father, then I don't know what a father is." On top of that, he's given his dream career opportunity, directing a show on Broadway. A happy ending for everyone, right? Well, not quite. A year later, Charles, Oliver and Mabel are reunited on opening night of Oliver's show, with Charles landing a leading role opposite Ben Glenroy, played by guest star Paul Rudd. Ben and Charles do not get on at all, and in a not-so-thinly veiled threat before the curtains come up, he warns Ben to stay away from her. An unshaken Ben tells him, "Why? What are you going to do?" To which Charles responds, "I know what you did." As the show starts, Ben is left standing alone on stage in a trench coat and trilby hat. Barely saying his first line, he suddenly keels over, coughing up blood and dying right there on the stage. Charles and Oliver rush to him, but it's too late, and Mabel is left realizing after a year of living a normal life, the trio are back with a new murder to solve. Looking horrified and a little mad, Mabel explains it best as she utters, "You've got to be kidding me." See you next season, podcasters.